Forget your typical wedding cake. Prepare to be amazed by RoboCake, a delectable feat of engineering where gummy robots groove and the chocolate serves as a battery. Watch the story for more details.
Look at this. This is RoboCake, an edible robotic wedding cake created by a Swiss-Italian team of scientists and chefs. RoboCake features dancing gummy teddy bears and chocolate-encased edible batteries that power LED candles.
The robotic cake is composed of just some examples of robotic food. It is made of it looks like a wedding cake, and on top of this wedding cake we have two dancing bears, and we have chocolate batteries. The chocolate batteries are used to power some candle lights. The consistency, the taste, and the smell of the robotic dancing bear and of the chocolate batteries have been refined by pastry chefs of the Lausanne Hospitality School.
By blending robotics and culinary arts, the RoboCake project aims to demonstrate sustainable waste reduction and potential uses in health and environmental monitoring. The cake's centerpiece features two robotic gummy bears made from gelatin and syrup that move using an internal pneumatic system.
The dancing bears are made of gelatin, especially designed gelatin that has very good flavor and consistency. They have inner tubes that can be pressurized by a pump. It's like a system of arteries in our bodies and the heart. And their bodies are made in such a way that they have special cuts and special thickness, so that when the corresponding arteries in the bears are inflated by the heart, the bear will tend to move in desired direction. For example, the necks will move up and down, and the arms will move so that the two bears hug each other.
Researchers claim that this cake-based technology could help tackle two major waste streams. Firstly, the 40 million tons of electronic waste generated annually by replacing traditional electronics. And secondly, food waste through its fully consumable components. Building on the idea of sustainable technology, researchers are now exploring an even more radical approach, creating robots that disappear without a trace.
We see possible application of edible electronics for health monitoring. In our case, we are focused on developing examples of smart pills that can be safely ingested and that are degraded within the body after performing their function.
A dash of robotics, a sprinkle of culinary art, and a whole lot of potential to change what we know about e-waste. Who knew the future could taste so sweet?
Imagine bananas that stay perfectly ripe for longer, thanks to advancements in gene editing that's now possible. Take a look.
Can you guess the most popular fruit in the world? Well, the answer is banana. According to German data gathering portal Statista, over 139 billion kilograms of bananas were produced globally in 2023, the highest figure in global fruit production that year. Though banana is a widely loved fruit, does it not irk you when it starts turning mushy brown so quickly? Well, that could soon become a thing of the past. A UK-based tech bio company, Tropic, has edited the genes of the fruit to extend its shelf life.
We know the genes that are responsible for the browning of the banana fruit. So we have modified these genes, and therefore now our non-browning bananas, that you can cut them and they will remain fresh and yellow for much longer.
Tropic claims the idea is to increase a peeled banana's shelf life up to 12 hours.
Genetic modification is a process where you'll take a gene from a different organism, a different species, and introduce it into the genome of the plant that you're working with. So we absolutely don't do that. All we are doing is changing very specific DNA sequences within the banana that are already there.
Apart from being a rich source of essential nutrients, bananas are also a big contributor of food waste due to its quick browning process. The company claims the genetically edited bananas can reduce food waste and carbon emissions by 25%.
Otherwise they end up in the freezer and they just live there forever. And apparently they'll be used for banana bread one day, but never seems to happen.
These genetically modified bananas could reach the supermarkets of several countries within months. So the next time you buy bananas, you'll know why they don't go bad in a few hours.
Mount Etna erupts again with intense activity in southeast crater area. We leave you with these visuals as we slip into a very short break. Stay with us. You are watching Beyond World is One.
Has been charged with murder, accused of killing her 3 children in a horrifying Toowoomba house fire. Live to McKenna Bailey at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. McKenna, tonight you can reveal the woman's identity.
We can tell you the accused mother is 36-year-old Eloisa Brighton, who is facing serious charges, including 3 counts of murder following the horrific Harristown house fire last Wednesday. The out-of-control blaze claiming the lives of 3 of her children, including a 9-year-old boy who was found inside the Merritt Street home, as well as her 2 daughters, aged just 4 and 7, who later passed away from their injuries at the Queensland Children's Hospital. Eloisa's 34-year-old partner underwent surgery for serious injuries to his arm, while an 11-year-old child and an 18-year-old managed to escape the fire with minor injuries. Eloise has also been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder and arson following an extensive investigation. The accused mother's matter was mentioned at the Brisbane Magistrates Court today and adjourned until Friday. Now today we also visited the Toowoomba home, where there continues to be an outpouring of support, with fresh floral tributes still being laid as this tight-knit community continues to grieve this immense loss. Melissa, police say Eloisa Brighton remains here at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital in a critical condition tonight in the ICU.
McKenna, thank you.
An Australian influencer has caused an ethical firestorm, admitting she paid almost $50,000 to choose the sex of her child. The mother of 3 accessed services from a doctor in the United States who says our laws banning gender selection are absolutely ridiculous.
A near $50,000 bill and cross-continental travel to choose the sex of her IVF baby. Melbourne influencer Caitlin Bailey now hosing down the ethical debate that's followed her story.
If there's people out there that it could potentially help and not feel so alone, that's why I shared it.
Choosing the gender of a child is illegal in Australia.
Is really wrong ethically, morally and legally, and it sends a message that you're only going to conditionally love this child.
But US doctor Daniel Potter is who Aussie patients are getting treatment from in a country where the practice is commonplace.
We help people have healthy babies, happy, intact families that want to expand.
While gender selection might be illegal in Australia at the moment, it's certainly not the end of the issue. That Californian doctor is travelling here later in the year to continue pushing his agenda. According to the Plunkett Centre for Ethics, the latest surveys show the Australian public isn't ready for a legal change.
It's still politically, socially, ethically controversial in the community.
And while Australians today are split on the subject,
I just think it should be natural selection. It should be what comes naturally.
I don't think it's my place to say, so I think it should be available for people if they so choose.
Caitlin's prepared for the birth of her daughter this winter, perhaps not so for an ethical debate.
It's just freaking me out thinking what's potentially to come, but I'm just going to stay positive.
Laura Turner, 9 News.
A former Sydney plastic surgeon who preyed on young girls for sex has told a court he's appalled and ashamed of himself. Richard Zakalareyu showered the girls with compliments and cash before meeting them, including 3 in Newcastle.
While Richard Zakalareyu was running a successful cosmetic surgery at Double Bay, the 70-year-old was also showering young girls with money and paying some of them for sex. Today, the disgraced doctor told a sentence hearing in Newcastle, "I'm ashamed and I'm appalled at myself that I created such harm and damage." Zakalareyu, who's previously pleaded guilty to a raft of charges, lured 6 girls through social media and dating sites, telling them things like, "You're so beautiful, I wish I could see all of you, and I would pay money to see you like that." And pay he did, giving them large amounts of money, first for naked pictures and videos of themselves. Between September 2021 and October 2022, he also met the girls in person, 2 in Sydney, 3 in Newcastle and 1 in Queensland. At the time, they were aged between 13 and 16. In total, he gave them more than $30,000. On one occasion, he gave one girl $100 for birth control after having sex with her. And in October 2022, he travelled to Newcastle to meet 3 girls in a hotel room. While Zakalareyu paid all 3, today his lawyer noted he only had physical contact with 1. Under questioning by Crown Prosecutor Christy Mully, Zakalareyu admitted to pursuing the girls even after learning they were all under 18. Zakalareyu's days as a plastic surgeon are now behind him. The 70-year-old telling the court that during his 2.5 years in jail, he's worked in the kitchen and also as a machinist. The 70-year-old remains in custody and will be sentenced on 10 charges on Friday. Tyson Cottrell, NBN News.
In other news, Colombian President Gustavo Petro said his country will join China's Belt and Road Initiative. Petro made this statement at the start of his visit to China, during which he is set to meet with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Take a listen.
Como Colombia, somos libres.
We are going to sign the Silk Road Agreement. Both Latin America and Colombia are free and sovereign, independent, and the relationships we establish with any nation in the world, to the north, east, west, or south, must be based on freedom and equality. Thus, we have decided to take a deep step forward between China and Latin America.
Profundo entre China y América Latina.
Petro said Colombia will look to use those funds for artificial intelligence projects and provide employment opportunities to young people. Though any commercial treaty will need to be approved by Colombia's Congress, while the move could potentially strengthen Beijing's increasing influence in the region, it will further strain Colombia's ties with the United States as the announcement comes on the heels of a standoff between the Colombian president and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump over deportation policies. Now, in January, Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs on Colombian goods if Colombia did not comply with U.S. deportation demands. In recent years, Colombia has seen major investments from Chinese companies, including the development of Bogota's first metro line as a part of a broader effort to strengthen ties with China. Historically, Colombia has maintained a strong alliance with the United States, with the U.S. remaining one of Colombia's largest trading partners, to which it exports oil, cut flowers and coffee. Notably, more than a dozen other Latin American nations have already signed on to China's Belt and Road Initiative.
关税战、贸易战没有赢家，霸凌霸道只会孤立自身。中国同拉美和加勒比国家都是全球南方重要成员。独立自主是我们的光荣传统，发展振兴是我们的天然权利，公平正义是我们的共同追求。面对地缘政治和阵营对抗、暗流涌动、单边主义、 保护主义逆流增长，中方愿同拉方携手启动5大工程，共谋发展振兴，共建中拉命运共同体。
The United States and China have agreed to pause their trade war. Both nations are seeing eye to eye to lower the import taxes on goods that are being traded between Washington and Beijing. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that the trade talks between the two nations were conducted with a motive to avoid escalation, claiming that the United States does not want a generalized decoupling between the two largest economies in the world.
We do not want a generalized decoupling between the two largest economies in the world. What we want is the U.S. is going to decouple in strategic industries, which we saw during COVID.
Now, Washington and Beijing are cancelling some tariffs altogether and are suspending others for 90 days by the 14th of May. The additional U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports, that's the extra tariffs imposed in this recent standoff, will fall from 145% to 30%, while the recently hiked Chinese tariffs on some U.S. imports will fall from 125% to just 10%. Moreover, the U.S. measures still include an extra 20% component that is aimed at putting pressure on Beijing to do more to curb the illegal trade in fentanyl, a powerful opioid drug. Now, China has also halted other non-tariff countermeasures, which includes the export of critical minerals to the United States, which it put in place in response to the initial escalation. Now, the announcement of the agreement between the world's two powerhouse economies has been broadly welcomed worldwide, with hopes that the US-China trade truce could finally put a stop to a full-scale tariff war. Most Asian stocks rose, tracking a rally in Wall Street following a rapid $6 trillion surge in the Standard & Poor's 500 from the brink of a bear market. Trading action on Monday suggested more upside. The gains in Asia were driven by Japanese stocks, with the TOPIX rising for the 13th consecutive day. The United Kingdom and China deals led to investor optimism of a wider de-escalation in the ongoing US-led trade war on multiple fronts. Now, investors are also jumping back into the Asian stocks as they unwind the defensive measures that have been put in place at the height of April's tariff chaos.
I mean, at 30%, which is where they set, 20% being the tariff that President Trump imposed for what he sees as China's failure to do enough to rein in fentanyl precursor exports. 30% is still a high number. It's still an existential threat for a number of exporters. You saw a huge relief rally in financial markets yesterday, but for exporters who are having to do business planning, 30% is a number that they can't absorb. And so for shipments that are going out, they're going to have to figure out how to share the pain with the purchasers in the U.S. In order to make it work.
A day after a deadly ambush killed 11 soldiers, Ecuador has deployed 1,500 troops to an Amazon region to find and eliminate the guerrillas responsible for the attack. In a post on social media platform X, Ecuador's Ministry of Defense announced the deployment of special forces, intelligence and counter-terrorism forces to neutralize the criminal groups operating in that region. The Defense Ministry also declared that it would intensify military operations to combat illegal mining. On Friday, 11 Ecuadorian armed personnel were ambushed during an operation to combat illegal mining near its border with Peru. The attack was attributed to the Comandos de la Frontera, a group of former FARC dissidents. The Comandos de la Frontera is made up of dissidents from various fronts of the now-defunct Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. The group had not accepted peace agreement signed between the Colombian state and the guerrillas in 2016.
A group of white South Africans arrived in the United States on Monday, where they were granted refugee status by the Trump administration. US President Donald Trump said Afrikaners were victims of a genocide, echoing the far-right conspiracy theory supported by his advisor Elon Musk. But in South Africa, both the government and scholars dispute claims of persecution.
Certainly these individuals don't fall in the category of refugee and the reason why the South African government has to insist on this is because it is going to then give credibility to the lie that indeed they are being persecuted, that indeed they are running away from some conflict, some white genocide and so forth. So legally, they don't fit that status. But understandably, the United States have to call them refugees because this is how they can then justify chartering a plane, bringing them into the country, setting them up at refugee centers, and so on and so forth, and give them the necessary assistance.
In a phone conversation, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa told Donald Trump he had received false information on Afrikaners' situation. Trump said he planned to address the issue with South African leadership in a meeting next week.
It is unfortunate because the United States and the Trump administration is trying to blacken the name of South Africa and of the South African government. We traditionally over the last 30 years have been a receiver of refugees from all over the Southern African continent, people that are indeed running away from persecutions, from conflict, from war, whether it is in the DRC, whether it is in Sudan, whether it is further afield. And now, because of this stunt that is being pulled by the Trump administration, they are trying to say to the world that we ourselves have now become a country where people are seeking refugee status.
The group of Afrikaners arrived outside Washington on a private charter plane and were greeted by U.S. authorities. The U.S. government has made the resettlement of white South Africans a priority, despite engaging in a wider crackdown on asylum seekers from other countries.
The first group of around 50 white South Africans arrived in the United States for resettlement after President Donald Trump granted them refugee status. The small group from South Africa, including children holding small American flags, arrived at the Dulles International Airport outside Washington on a private charter plane, and they were greeted by Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau and the Homeland Security Deputy Secretary Troy Edgar. Now, welcoming the group as refugees, the Trump administration claims that they face discrimination and violence at home.
The president made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who were the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States, and he's now delivering on that promise.
So as the first batch of white South Africans arrived in the United States, President Trump claimed that South Africa's leadership was traveling to see him next week.
Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. And, we're supposed to have I guess a G20 meeting there or something. But we're having a G20 meeting. I don't know how we can go unless that situation's taken care of. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. And farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And people that live in South Africa, they say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from that violence and come here.
Now, back in South Africa, Trump's refugee program for white South Africans, called Afrikaners, who are mostly Dutch descendants, has drawn criticism.
I don't believe in running away from problems. We've got a lovely country and we make it work. And especially Afrikaans people, I think since we came here, we always made it work. It doesn't matter what happened, in the past and so on. We always look up and just make things work. And so my point of leaving South Africa, I've been all over the world and always come back. And this is definitely the country of milk and honey. We're very blessed in South Africa the lifestyle we're living, with all the drama going on, it's still one of the best countries in the world to live in.
America, maybe they can help us one day, but we should be helping ourselves right now. That's the only way. We can't run away from our problems because they will always be there. If you run away, you're just leaving it behind.
Now, South Africa's government has maintained that there is no evidence of persecution against white South Africans, contradicting President Trump's claims of a genocide. The government called them completely false and attributing them to misinformation.
The United Nations Aviation Agency has blamed Russia for the downing of a Malaysian jetliner over Ukraine in 2014 that claimed the lives of 298 people, and this incident happened nearly 11 years ago. Australia and the Netherlands were the countries with the most number of casualty counts, as a result of which the two countries also quickly called for Russia to assume responsibility for the downing and pay damages. The Malaysian Airlines Boeing 777 aircraft was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur at an altitude of 33,000 feet on 17th July 2014 when it was allegedly shot down by a Russian surface-to-air missile over eastern Ukraine. According to reports, intense fighting was going on at the time between pro-Russian separatists and Ukrainian forces. Flight MH17 crashed near the Ukrainian village of Kharbove, killing all 298 passengers and crew members on board. The International Civil Aviation Organization, based in Montreal, said that the claims brought by Australia and the Netherlands of the shooting down of flight MH17 on July 17th of that year were well-founded in fact and in law. The UN aviation body also said that this was the first time in its history that its council has made a determination on the merits of a dispute between member states. In the tragedy that took place, Dutch nationals accounted for 2/3 of the dead, along with 38 Australians and about 30 Malaysians, with many victims having dual nationalities. Then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko called it a terrorist attack. Whereas then US President Barack Obama said a missile fired from separatist-held territory was to be blamed and the rebels would not have been able to hit the airliner without Russian support. In 2022, a Dutch court sentenced 3 men to life in prison over the downing. Among them, 2 were Russians. However, Russia refused to extradite them. Moscow has consistently denied any involvement in the tragedy.